Welcome to the latest edition of Until Saturday. Week 1, guys. Week 1 picks. I know week 0 kind of, wet the beak a little bit, but week 1 really does hit a little bit different, doesn't it? I'm joined by Chris Vanini. How you doing, bud?
Hey, man. I might see you later tonight. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Thursday night football. We got some Friday night games. We have some Saturday games. We have some Sunday games. We have some Monday games. You fired up about that, David?
I love the week 1 because it is a buffet, and the Sunday, Monday games are going to be actually good. But I will not be seeing you tonight, Ari, or apparently tomorrow night. We got a bone to pick, Ari. We'll settle this off air.
Well,
you'll see me though.
Sleep over at my house.
I will see Chris. I will see Chris, unfortunately, but we can't all be beggars. Beggars can't be choosers, I guess.
And true to being a very good host of podcasting, I forgot to introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, I'm Ari Wasserman, and I'm pleased to be back from out of town. If you haven't seen, Max Olson and I have been spending the last month of our lives flying all over the country, eating and drinking on campuses, and filming a series called The Official Visit, which is on YouTube now, sponsored and supported by StubHub, where we went to 5 college campuses: Ohio State, Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia, and most recently Texas. And we went and toured the facilities, ate at the best restaurants, drank the places you need to drink at, and have presented it to you in 8 to 10 minute videos that will be releasing every Thursday on YouTube. Please go check it out. And I got to tell you guys, I don't think I'm one for film production, because it took 2 full days to record each episode, and they whittled it down to 8 minutes, and it's kind of demoralizing, but great at the same time because they look good. I think that they're worth watching.
I wish I was able to edit my own work in that way, because if I produced these shows, they'd be like 3.5 hours long.
They're just good. Like it's high quality stuff. The first episode's out. I've seen the clips and everything.
Yes.
Really good stuff. And it's not just some of it, you're not just going to the places everybody goes to. Like, you actually learn something from visiting these towns. And I think that's really important. So good job to both of you. I hope you're doing okay after a month of traveling and eating. It sounded very different.
Yes. Yeah, no, I'm just like, just going to eat salads for the rest of the year. I just have to. I'm over here sipping on Crystal Light right now. My lips look like I just got done smooching my wife. She's out of town. I promise you it's just Crystal Light. So, yeah, let's get into week 1 picks. This is my favorite show of the week. If you've noticed that I've been patchy in and out of these podcasts, it's because of The Official Visit filming schedule, and that has now come to a close. I'm 100% locked into the season and super excited to really dive in it with you guys for the rest of the year. Before we get into it, be sure to follow the podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Drop us a 5-star review if you'd be so kind, and leave questions for your comments, and we will make sure to address them on the show. And of course, subscribe to Until Saturday on YouTube. Every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday for the most part, we will be going live for picks, Saturday reaction, and then Sunday sound off. This week, Sunday sound off will be on Monday because the best game of the weekend is on Sunday. So we just wanted to get that one in the books before we do it. So we'll go live at some point mid-morning on Monday. We'll keep you posted on the time for that. And of course, if you listen to the first Sunday sound off, the voicemails are going to be a huge part of this whole thing. We got a lot of good ones for the first week. We could use a lot more. 316-462-9852 is the number. 316-462-9852. J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It doesn't hit quite the same now, Ari.
It doesn't. No. Yeah, I tried to run it back, but
I tried to come up. Yeah, I tried to come up with some names for the thing. Remember, I tried to give you some letters. Nothing that was all that good. Actually, I tweeted it at Sam, but there are no clear letters to make it easier than remembering just simply those straight numbers, I think.
Yeah, I think one was Hoax 85, which I'm not calling that number.
That's
a number to give Chris money directly. That's what that
is. It was 316 Hoax 85A, I believe was
Sure. Sounds like the phone number you would be getting a call from to steal your credit card information.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we have 10 picks this week. Big games. We're going to go through some trap game scenarios, maybe locks of the week, sickos game of the week. And there's only one answer to that one when we get to it, by the way. And quad box of uncertainty, because Dave is more infatuated with the 4 quad box YouTube college football viewing experience than any human being I've ever met in my entire life. And we're going to try to,
Yeah.
say which 4 games are we going to want on those quad box viewing. And of course, as we get into the lines and the picks, remember that these betting spreads are presented by BetMGM. So first game of the week, let's get started. I'm excited. Saturday games we're going to start with because this is being recorded on Thursday, published on Thursday. We don't want to blow the episode for people who listen on Friday morning with the games that are being played on Thursday night, namely Florida and Utah. So you can get those picks at the end of the show, along with an interview with Darius Rucker that our Mike Zimmerman did, about a 5-6 minute interview with the country music star talking about his South Carolina fanhood. And apparently he's re-recording the College Game Day song.
I believe that's right. When it comes to the College Game Day song and Darius Rucker, I only want to be with you. So, it's a good start. And maybe you guys can hold my hand as we go through these picks.
Do you remember the wait, real quick? Do you remember the Ubben? Do you either of you remember the previous Game Day song, Bubba Sparks, before it was?
I'm vaguely familiar. It was not iconic in the same way that "Coming to Your City" has become. So whenever the conversation came out, I saw some people tweeting the YouTube, and I watched it, and I kind of remembered it. But this was like 2003, 4, 5, 6. So like, I was aware of College Game Day, but it hadn't become like this cultural institution in the same way that it had. And I think I was still like on the TNBC train in high school back in those days, getting my City Guys, my Saved by the Bell, the college years. I got to check the years on some of these, but I don't think I was spending my Saturdays watching and going to college football games, but I don't think I was watching as much Game Day in 2003, but I do vaguely remember it. Shout out to Bubba Sparks.
I'm curious.
Should we talk about football, guys? What do you think?
Let's do it. Let's talk football. Let's talk football.
Okay, so let's start with some Saturday games here. And of course, the freak show of the week, if we had a category for that, would be Utah State at Iowa. This is the first game for the drive to, 325?
325, yes.
Iowa is laying 24.5 points. That means they are giving another team 24.5 points, which means that they have to score quite a bit. Is this the type of game where this team will run up the score if they can to try to preserve that drive to 325?
I mean, kind of. Like, here's the thing. I generally think, as funny as the drive to 325 is, Iowa has a functional quarterback now in Cade McNamara, and it's never pretty, but it's never, like, when they have a quarterback, especially, it's never as bad as it was last year. So, the team total, I believe, is 33.5 on this game. I think I'm taking Iowa here. I think the defense will be the defense, and they are pretty physical, and I think they can lean on Iowa State here. So I think Iowa does run it up here, and not to spoil the drive to 325, but if you're a realtor, I wouldn't be blowing up Brian Ferentz's phone just yet, because I think he's going to be sticking around, and I think they get in the 40s in this one.
This will be the game, I think, that tells us whether or not Iowa's any different, because remember, they struggled last year with FCS teams, with bad teams. Like they were losing to, was it South Dakota State, I think, at halftime?
No, it was
last
North
year?
Dakota. I think it was 10-7 against North Dakota last year.
Yeah. So like,
not North Dakota State, just North Dakota.
They couldn't do it then. I mean, they couldn't do it against FCS teams. So in Utah State's a team, they won the Mountain West 2 years ago. They were decimated by injuries last year. They've had a lot of portaling. So it's kind of hard to tell what Utah State will be. Their quarterback situation is not great. I think it'll be very difficult for them to score. Putting this line at 24.5 at the first game of the drive to 325, where you have to get 25 points per game, is just like incredible timing. And I'm sure people will get sick of it at some point, but this is a really, really interesting game, I think, because Utah State's a good team. It's just a lot of unknowns. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Utah State covers. Until I see it, I won't believe it from Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, of course, with this game, it's such a quarterback driven game. But the thing that I'm more interested in, because I think we know that Iowa's defense is going to be good, and I think that it is funny and hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious that the amount of points they have to score is the spread of the game. But what do we think about the 33? Like, I mean, do you think that Iowa is going to not, I mean, forget the spread and whether they cover it. Do you think they'll score more than 33 points in this game?
Yes, I do. I think people, because there was so much attention on Iowa last year and all the laughs, and it was very funny and it was very ugly. I think people somehow forgot that their personnel was not very good last year. Like the quarterback that they played a bunch last year just retired, didn't even bother transferring and
I think he's just a student on their campus
Yes,
now.
That's what I'm saying. So like, I think that tells you a little bit. And I think Cade McNamara, he may not be Superman, but I think he's a pretty good player. He took Michigan to the playoff, a couple years ago. And I think he's a guy that at the very least is a huge upgrade. Now that's a low bar, but I think Iowa will be not good, not pretty, but I think they'll be functional, dare I say competent offensively this year. And I think when they play defenses that are going to give them a lot of trouble, that's going to be a problem for them. I don't think they're going to be very good when they go up against people that have better athletes. Utah State's not going to have better athletes. And I think that when you can win the battle up front, protect Cade McNamara, get Eric All some touches. I mean, their personnel, especially at skill positions and especially at quarterback, is so much better that I think the drive to 325 is going to disappoint a lot of people this year because they might hit it by like mid-November.
Well, they had like no wide receivers last year too.
Yes,
especially early in the year. That was a part of it. But Utah State also put new coordinators on both sides of the ball, so there will be an adjustment there for them as well.
The thing that I think is really funny about the whole situation about last year is that we spent a lot of time discussing how terrible the team was on the field, but a main fixture of the offensive coordinator's job isn't to make it look pretty or sexy on the field. Mm-hmm. The question is, how did Iowa get to a place where they were starting a quarterback that retired and didn't transfer somewhere and had zero receivers? And I understand that they had some injury, but personnel and accumulation of talent is a major aspect of this scenario. So if you think that last year didn't go well because there were some personnel issues, who is responsible for that? The same person that runs the offense. So it's
but Ari, this is what we're talking about though, is I think Brian Ferentz deserves all of the criticism because they didn't have good personnel and they weren't doing anything creative or anything interesting to try and offset that. A coach's job is to make the most out of what you have. They didn't have anything. They couldn't win a lot of one-on-one matchups, and they spent the whole season trying to cram this square peg into this round hole that just didn't work, and they weren't doing anything to try and, any kind of, there wasn't a lot of misdirection. There wasn't a lot of creativity, a lot of run, pass, punt, field position, lean on Tory Taylor. Like, we get it.
And then in a 4-month period, it's just going to be like an absolute renaissance of offensive creativity and innovation.
They're not going to be a top 50 offense in college football, but they're going to be the personnel is so much better now that I think they're going to be not a laughing stock, which is, important.
And if they weren't a laughing stock last year, they might have actually played in the Big Ten title game a year ago. That's the funniest thing about the whole thing.
Yeah, probably.
To your point about the personnel, remember they had Charlie Jones, they had Chuck Sizzle on the team. He left, went to Purdue, became a 4th-round pick. So that's on the coaches as well. So Iowa hasn't scored 25 points per game each of the last 2 years. So we'll see.
I think Iowa's going to cover the game. I think that there's only so much hope. If they come out here and it's another one of these 14-10 type games, it's just don't even show up for the rest of the year. Pour it on.
Please show up because I want to watch it if they're going to do that.
Yeah, and I promise. I know people got a little irritated last year because we spent a lot of times, on Iowa as much time as we're doing right now. We're going to keep you posted on the drive to 325, but I promise you it won't be 20 minutes of every podcast. So just stick with us.
It might be.
Okay. Maybe I shouldn't make any promises I don't think I can keep. But okay, the next game, guys. Dave is flying, getting on an airplane to come to our city for this game. This one is the buildup in your head. I can't imagine what it would be like, Dave, for you. But everybody's ready to see Colorado take the field against number 17 TCU. TCU is a 20.5-point favorite. And let me just say one thing before I let you cook, Dave.
Okay.
Did you look at the 247 composite?
I was going to have this conversation with you, Ari. I read your column this morning. I literally wrote about this briefly yesterday in our newsletter thing with whether we read the Until Saturday newsletter. We need to have a talent composite conversation, Ari. I'm very excited for you to cook a little bit, but go on.
Well, the question that I have is you were so plugged in with the complete flip of that roster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew Colorado was in the 60s last year in their total team composite
63.
talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you would have just blindly asked me before they released the new one on Wednesday, where do you think Colorado would be after the flip? Considering how many players they took from Jackson State and, how hard it is to actually flip your roster, I certainly would not have guessed anywhere above 40. So when I actually saw the data of what Colorado is bringing from just a raw talent standpoint from the recruiting rankings, I was shocked. And the number, and I don't know if you were shocked, but I was, and I think they are in the mid to low 30s, right? They're 35.
35.
That is higher than I would have thought. What about you?
No, that's about where I thought they'd be. Here's the issue. It's a fascinating question, right? Because talent composite is a relatively reflective, reasonable metric of how much raw talent you have on your team. However, the question is, when you build your roster in the manner that Colorado has, and you get guys like, for every Alton McCaskill, 4-star guy that was productive at Houston, AAC freshman of the year, they missed last year, and a Dylan Edwards that they yanked from Notre Dame commit, and he's going to be a big-time player for them, and, Shador and Travis Hunter, for all those guys, there's a lot of, Amari McNeils and, guys that were 4 stars at other programs, 3 stars, that didn't really pan out and didn't really do anything. So that number is not surprising, maybe slightly inflated. But this is why, this whole experiment is so fascinating, because how real is that number? Because Dion he's added a bunch of pieces that he probably couldn't get at Jackson State. Like I said, guys like Dylan Edwards, guys like Alton McCaskill, some transfers, guys like a Jimmy Horn Jr., big time, they're going to have good skill position talent. But I think the deal with TCU will be, the lines all season. I have concerns about that. I think they're going to be able to actually rush the passer. I think they're going to be pretty good there. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop the run. I have major questions about their ability to protect Shador Sanders. But, Ari, we can get into the pick here. This is too many points. I think Colorado's going to struggle, but TCU is not exactly a world beater. I think people see 1-11 and all the controversy with CU, and they see national runner-up and forget that TCU was not one of the 4 best teams last year. They were a very good team. They're rebuilding a bunch. They've lost a ton of pieces. Max Duggan, Kendra Miller, Quentin Johnson, all those big pieces. I'm forgetting a DB with Trey Tomlinson. They lost him as well.
Yep.
Johnny Hodges is the biggest piece that they're bringing back, but they're rebuilding a ton. I think TCU is going to be good, but the gap between these two is not that big. I think TCU is 24, so I think
19.
TCU's 19. So
that's good.
That's
because guess what? Colorado ain't the only team that portals.
Yes, exactly. So
Sonny Dykes was portaling before Dion was.
But I'm. This is a fascinating game because in one sense, I think Colorado can score enough to keep this close. But in another sense, I was texting with a coach yesterday who reminded me that, hey, Joe Gillespie runs that 3-3-5 stack that torments this Baylor offense. The way that they do this stuff. I mean, if you remember West Virginia, when they were running the 3-3 stack under Tony Gibson at West Virginia, they used to absolutely just make Baylor pull its hair out. The best Baylor teams. They'd go out there and score in the 20s, and they'd be like, what is happening? Because you can slow down their running game by bringing in a lot of rushers from weird angles. It confuses the offensive line, and this offensive line is not exactly the biggest piece of chemistry. So this is a super interesting game just because it is so unpredictable. It's not in my quad box of uncertainty because I knew we were going to spend a lot of time chatting about it, but it's certainly one of the 2 or 3 most interesting games of the week. And, for all, this is put up or shut up time for Colorado. So I'm curious where you guys land on this game. I think Colorado will keep this somewhat close.
Did you guys see the Fox commercial for this game? The one that is too legit to quit. It's entirely Dion in Colorado with a 2-second clip of TCU that calls them a Big 12 power. This is the team that just played for the national championship game. And now they've got some bulletin board material going up against a team that was 1-11 last year. my biggest question about Colorado is if they are as small as they look in all their social media clips. This is not a team that looks very big. And to your point about the team talent ranking, there were 15 guys on that team who are former 5 or 4-star players. None of them are offensive linemen. One of them is a defensive lineman. So, like, that's where I am very concerned about Colorado. And you talk to the people on TCU, they feel good about this team. Like, they were not supposed to do what they did last year, obviously. But you lose a couple of star players here and there on both sides of the ball. But I think they feel like their depth across the board is a lot better. And remember, Chandler Morris won the starting job last year over Max Duggan and was better than Max Duggan in practice throughout the season. They just couldn't bench Max Duggan because of what he was doing in all the games, becoming the Heisman runner-up. So I think TCU is weirdly a team we're not talking about and very much overlooking considering what they did last year. I've got TCU and taking the points and everything with that.
You know, it's completely appropriate that both of you guys are on different ends of the spectrum because there really is zero understanding or insight of what to expect in this game. You know, like, how do you actually know what to pick here? Like, I would gamble on dice on the side of the street, but like, I still have no idea how this is a bettable game. Like, in one set of thought processes here, I could see Travis Hunter making some huge plays because he's legitimately going to be the best player on the field. I can see Shedeur Sanders making plays. I can see Colorado scoring. But on the other hand, I could just see TCU physically dominate this team in every aspect of the game. Like, I mean, I feel like Colorado keeping it within a touchdown isn't surprising, and TCU winning 59-0 isn't surprising. So the thing that I want to know, and you
come on now.
Well, if they don't have any lines and TCU gets after it, like, you can't. I don't care how good your skill position players are.
I can see like 40. I can see like 51-17 plausibly.
I mean, that's not that much different.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
it is.
I don't know.
I'm just
trying to say that, like, a complete physical domination of this team. If you want to change the score around, like, it doesn't change the point I'm trying to make. Like, you know this. Like, can they get to the passer and can they stop people from getting to their passer? Like, do they have the bodies up front?
I think they can get to the passer. I think what they'll be able to run. I don't think they're going to be able to stop the run. You know, for a lot of the reasons that Chris talked about, I think they're going to have a lot of issues there. And then protection. I mean, offensive line is built so on chemistry. We don't really know who's going to go out there for them. It was a huge loss for them to not have Tyler Brown. He might have been their best offensive lineman. I think he's supposed to be one of the strongest players on the team. But ultimately, I have to check and see who they eventually roll out. But there's a chance that Colorado rolls out 4 offensive linemen in their starting 5 that weren't there in the spring. And especially against this defense that is so confusing and requires so much communication and can hit you and stuff the run in ways that are very frustrating. I mean, Michigan dealt with this. You know, everybody said, "Oh, Michigan's going to be able to just pound them." Well, how did TCU slow down that running game? Because they come this 3-3 stack. You know, I always compare it to. It's a little bit like the triple option of defense. Not a lot of people run it. It's very hard for quarterbacks because there's a lot of different reads, guys coming from different places. But it's even harder for offensive linemen to get your run fits and block the run the way you need to and create the holes because they bring rushers from weird angles that you're not used to. It's not a downhill sort of situation. So, you know, that's it. That's my concern. I'm not even sure if it's going to be physical domination if Colorado gets run out of the gym on this game. I think it's going to be because the 3-3 stack just, you know, these are going to be athletes that this scheme and this staff and this offense just have not played against.
Dave, what is largely the way that you think the game is going to play out, like in your head, based on what you know? Because probably there aren't a lot of people who have spent as much time writing, researching, talking, and thinking about Colorado. Like, what's your best guess of what they bring to the table and how this game is going to look?
Well, I think Colorado's secondary is really going to struggle because, you know, Travis Hunter didn't exactly set the world on fire as a corner last year. Part of that's injury, but they don't have anybody on his level. I think secondary, they're really going to struggle. And I don't know if they're going to be able to protect. If they can protect Shedeur, they're going to score points. Like, their receivers are good. Their receivers are an above-average group. You have Travis Hunter. You have Jimmy Horn. I think Dylan Edwards is at running back. I think he's the guy. For all the press that Alton McCaskill's getting, and you know, we'll see about his health, I think Dylan Edwards is actually going to be the guy at running back for them. But I think it comes down to, can you protect and can you prevent the big play on defense because you talk to people around Colorado, you watch enough practice, buddy. There have been some fireworks offensively, and some of that's the offense, but a lot of that is poor tackling and a lot of.
Give me a score.
How much of that is the 5'9" guys who look like walk-ons in those social media clips playing cornerback?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, again, their depth chart is so amorphous. I'm gonna say something along the lines of like 41-24 TCU.
Okay.
I guess that would be a success for Colorado, right? Like, I don't know.
I mean,
so
it's
many
sort
people...
of like a we'll see. It's you didn't really.
That'd be a huge
anything,
success.
Would it?
If they don't get embarrassed,
if they score points and don't get run out of the building, that's a huge success. We're going to be talking about Colorado more than we are now.
No. Listen. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, this team was 1-11." This is not a 1-11 team. Like, there's 10 guys left over from that team. You brought in a whole new team. It's not about coaching guys up or even improving a 1-11 team. They just changed the roster. It's something totally different. This team is not a 1-11 team. It's not a 10-1 team or whatever they finished at Jackson State. It's just a whole weird fantasy team of guys that they plucked out of the portal.
It sounds
dysfunctional
and terrible.
Well, Dion says he doesn't care about culture. He doesn't care if guys like each other.
Yeah,
so
okay. You know the points. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to lay the points here. Like, I think that TCU is going to roll over them. I really do.
I do too.
So we'll see about that. But that, like, honestly speaking, like, I'm tempted to make TCU -20.5 the lock of the week. I just don't know who they're playing. Like, I don't know what it's going to be. So
I know
you seem to think that this is going to be a very functional group, but I think that, like, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop the run, and I'm really worried about their secondary. Means that I think TCU is going to score.
I think Colorado's going to do
that.
Colorado is too athletic in the skill positions to just not score.
Hey, if they're playing 7-on, if they change the rules and it's a 7-on-7 stipulation for the match, then it'll be.
I am with you though, Chris, because and I'm not trying to gang up on you, Dave, but like those videos. And from practice, it's like, do they have like Dylan Panthers out there like covering? Like, I don't even know what's going on.
This is 2006 state champions, Ari. Let's not besmirch the Dylan Panthers.
Yeah, but it's I'm excited and super excited just to see what we're dealing with here. And super excited to see how Dion behaves, win or lose. Okay, next game. Ohio State on the road at Indiana, laying 30.5 points. Ryan Day this week announced that Kyle McCord would start, but Devin Brown will play. So sounds like the competition is going to continue on into the season. And here we go. What do you guys think?
I think Indiana's going to do everything they can to offset that pass rush, quick throws, all kinds of stuff. I think it could be one of those games where Ohio State doesn't get a lot of sacks because Indiana is so protecting against, 5-step drop and sit. And they just try to throw to the perimeter and get nowhere because Ohio State has the better athletes. Pray for Indiana's offensive line in this game because I don't know how Indiana scores here. I think Ohio State maybe has to work through some kinks. We'll see what Kyle McCord does, but this is Ohio State big. Give me Ohio State. I'll lay the points for them. Buckeyes roll.
I'm taking Ohio State as well, but Indiana-Ohio State games are always kind of weird. It'll be like close for a half or something like that. And so we'll see how that looks. I think, Indiana's got a new quarterback situation. There's been some whispers they might look a little bit different on offense. I'm kind of curious, some things they might try to pull out. But the number one thing we're watching in this game is Kyle McCord, the guy. Does he come out? Did they score touchdowns in the first 2 drives? And you're set and you're good. That's kind of all we're expecting. It's a 30.5 point spread. It's not. I usually just stay away from big spreads like this because weird things can happen late in games. Week 1, guys get pulled. You never know. I would still pick Ohio State though, just because Indiana has been so bad the last 2 years. Like we remember 2019, 2020 Indiana arguably should have gone to the Big Ten championship game. They have, I think, one Big Ten win over the last 2 years. And I think it was Michigan State. They have completely fallen apart since they lost their coordinators the last couple of years, and I don't see that changing.
Yeah, I have a hard time with this game because, on one hand, the latest iterations of Indiana have been so bad, but on the other hand, Chris has been paying attention to these games. They've always been weird. 54-7 last year, but it's just I don't know how to feel about quarterback grab ass here. Of they're both going to play. Well, so how are they both going to play? Is it going to be every other series? Is it going to be one half or the other? Do you want meaningful reps for both quarterbacks? Is it 3 series then 3 series, or are these quarterbacks going to go into the game pressing because they're afraid they're going to get benched or don't make it the statement that they want to make in order to win the job? Seems to me that Ohio State would like to have a starting quarterback who plays the entire game by the Notre Dame game at the end of the month. And that seems to make sense, but they have the receivers. They definitely score as much as they want just with a functional game plan. But whenever you're playing musical quarterbacks, funky things can happen, or weird turnovers, forced picks. Just like not being in a groove makes 30.5 a hard spread to cover. Now, certainly it could be 66-10 or whatever, and it's an easy cover. But I just don't know how much to love Ohio State in this scenario, because I just think that there's going to be a lot of kinks to work through as a result of trying to figure out this whole battle. So I'm also very curious to see Ohio State's running backs. Trey Henderson was one of the best running back recruits that they've had in a long time, and he had a really good true freshman year last year. He was banged up and didn't play so well. It's like, is Ohio State just going to be able to run the ball at a level that they kind of have gotten away from, as they've kind of gotten this reputation as a finesse team? So I actually don't really believe that. I love Ohio State in this spot. I think I might take Indiana here, a team that's getting them on the road. They're getting them at home. They're playing these two quarterbacks, and Tom Allen has a ace up his sleeve, which is not naming his starting kicker. Did you guys see that?
Well, so he sort of did and sort of didn't. I actually watched a clip after that because everybody was pointing that out. He's asked if he has a starting kicker. He says we do. He's asked what the situation is, and then Tom Allen goes to explain it may depend on the length of the kick, who they pick. So I think they're just kind of going. I think it depends on the situation. He also didn't name a starting quarterback, and one of the guys in the mix, Ubben, you might remember this name, Taven Jackson.
Yeah,
I remember that name.
Top 100 recruit from Tennessee, played in 3 games last year. He has come over. He may get the start. If he does, I'm kind of curious what kind of maybe quarterback run game, what kind of QB run game they put in there as well. So we'll see what Indiana's got as well. But
this game has 45-17 written all over it, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of those games where it's like
Indiana's not scoring 17 points. Sorry, no.
Yeah, I mean, well, the hope for Ohio State is that their defense plays that way, where that statement holds water. So, we'll see. I just don't know if I love laying 30.5 week 1 on the road in a Big Ten game when you don't know how the quarterbacks are going to be handled. That's just a tough proposition for me. Okay, one of your guys' favorite sleepers of the year, or national championship sleepers anyway, Washington. Is hosting Boise State at home and laying 3 scores, 14.5. I know that there are some thought processes out there that Boise could really, really, really give them a game here. I've seen some people actually lightly predict that Boise's going to win. And I know that you're high, Chris, on Boise, right? Do you think they're going to be a 9-10 win team this year? What are you doing in this game?
This is my second biggest game of the week, other than Florida State, LSU. I am fascinated in this game. I am fascinated as somebody who picked Washington to go to the playoff, as I did. But I also think Boise State has a real shot to be the top group of 5 team. Boise State might be back, and I don't think people noticed because they started 2-2 last year. Quarterback goes in the portal. They fire the offensive coordinator. They lose to UTEP. It's a disaster. Well, they changed things up after that, and they go 8-0 in Mountain West Conference play. They play in the conference championship game, lose to Jake Haener and Fresno State, win their bowl game. So, they really turn things around on the back of Talon Green. Remember that name? He's the quarterback now. 6'6", takes long strides, really good in the run game, got a lot better as a passer as the year went on. They've got some really good running backs on this team and a really solid defense. This is a team that's going to run the ball, maybe try to shorten the game a little bit. I think I've got Boise State to cover the 14.5. Washington to win. They're going to put up a lot of points, but I think Boise can score and they can shorten the game a little bit with what they do in the running game. That I'm going to go with Boise State keeps it close enough and they cover.
I'm with you on this. I think Boise can win this game. Again, the super duper offenses that everybody assumes are just going to be like 50-yard touchdown, 60-yard touchdown, 60-yard touchdown. Week 1 can get a little hairy for some of them, even if you bring everything back. For a lot of reasons that you laid out. I'm not so sure. Chris, I just think Boise probably believes they can probably go toe-to-toe with these guys. I think you're going to see a ton of points in this ball game. I don't know that Washington flirts with a loss here. I wouldn't surprise me if Boise pushed them late, but 14.5 is too many. I think Boise, people really did, leave them for dead last year. It looked like a death spiral situation, and it was not. They rescued themselves out of that black hole, and I think that continues this year. So yeah, I'll take Boise in the points for sure here.
I don't know if I'm just a hater drinking haterade, but I just am fading Washington this year. And everybody thinks that they're going to be really, really good. I like Boise in the spot. I think it's a tough opening opponent. I will say that nobody throws a prettier pass than Michael Penix Jr. Trust me, I think it's gorgeous, but I just don't know if the sum of what this team has on it, on its roster and what they've, added and subtracted in the year off, automatically turns them into a playoff team. Especially with the tough Pac-12 this year, I just don't see it. And I know that it's not relevant to this game, but Boise State can run the football. They can shorten the games if it takes some time for them to all get on the same page, and they have some, tough spots there offensively in the first game that Boise State could be in this game in the fourth quarter. So I like taking the points here too.
Are they going to play for a statue of Chris Peterson, by the way?
They should.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of things Indiana
Who do you think?
Kalen DeBoer, the former OC, and Michael Penix, the former quarterback. Indiana could use that right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you consider Peterson to be who's the first school that comes to your mind when you think of him?
I mean, Boise. Just because he hung on there for so long.
Yeah.
He made all the noise at Boise and was good at Washington. The playoff was no slouch there, but at the end of the day, so many people tried to pry him away from Boise, and he did so many great things there that for me, it's still Boise.
Aaron points out we've got RG3 calling a Michael Penix Jr. game here, so get ready for that on commentary.
Not the first time.
But yeah, no, I think Chris Peterson, Boise, because you think of one of the most iconic plays in history, yes. the Statue of Liberty, and then you've got Chris Peterson on the sideline pumping his fist. And so he's part of that moment.
RG3 don't get fired challenge. Let's go.
Yeah. Hey, listen, buddy, I'm with him on that. Every single time we load the sticks up here, I got to just make sure that I keep it in line here. So, okay. The Dave Ubben Bowl, Middle Tennessee State at number 4, Alabama, laying 39.5 points. Are we laying 40 points for your squad, Dave Ubben?
We've been saying all offseason Bama is not going to be able to score, okay? And obviously they're going to dominate the line of scrimmage at this game. But Middle Tennessee State is not a tin can. This team won 15 games the last 2 years. This is too many points for an offense that they don't have game breakers. Bama wins this game comfortably, but 40
we have no
points,
Alabama listeners left in this podcast feed.
Probably None. Not. But you're not going to get I could see them getting a defensive score, but you're not going to get the easy. There goes a bust. Here's a 75-yard touchdown. Right after you went down the field, for 14 plays and kicked a field goal. We're not going to see that in this game. So lower scoring.
In order to cover 40, you do need to get those 75-yard. The 10-yard slant that somebody breaks a tackle and runs all the way down, because they might be able to do long sustained drives or, do 8 play, never not in control drives with the clock the way it is. And it's just a really hard spread to cover against a team that actually is quite functional, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So here's the thing about Middle Tennessee. They are usually functional. They get to a bowl game most years. They beat Miami last year handily. The problem is they lost everybody off that team. They are breaking in new players all over the place on the offensive side of the ball. So that's a group of 5 team you don't know what to expect anything from. I think Bama, just on pure talent alone, probably wins this 49-7 type of thing. I don't see Middle Tennessee doing anything offensively in this game. So it's basically whether or not Alabama can get to 40 points, 42 points. And I think they will. I think they'll get some big plays. I think Milroe will have a couple big runs, and I think they get there. Although, again, in general, spreads this big. I ain't touching them in general, but if I got to make a pick, not high on Middle Tennessee this year, so I'd say Bama.
We've lost all our Murfreesboro listeners now. Well done.
Well,
Chris.
I love the idea of just like Middle Tennessee State might not get a first down in the first half. So like how quickly and efficiently can Alabama's
Can
offense
we bet on
football?
that, Ari? Can we bet on Middle Tennessee State getting a first down in the first half?
I mean, listen, man, it was like you read the column or the thoughts piece that I wrote about the 247 Sport Composite.
Yeah.
It was like a really hard discussion of like Alabama and what to
Yeah.
make of that. You know, the Alabama team is the first team, I think, in the history of the 247 Sport Composite that has the point total that they have in the rankings. So the number one team in the country. They have over 1,000 points. And I think that when you break it all down across an 85-man roster, the average player on Alabama's roster is like a top 100 player. Like, I mean, think about that.
That sounds like the Athletics college football staff.
Yeah. Well, it sure does, bud. But I don't know. Like there is like it's like really, really hard for me. And you've kind of convinced me a little bit to not pick Alabama as a playoff team. But when you say that out loud into the atmosphere and then consider who coaches them,
I'm with you.
It's like this game could be 77-0 for all we know. And their defense is going to be nasty. It's going to be nasty. You know what? I'm laying the points.
No, we're going Bama.
We've poisoned Ari.
I don't switch up. I think that 40 is a lot for this game.
Yes.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Saturday night is Penn State for real. West Virginia on the road in Happy Valley. Penn State minus 20.5.
Butt kicking of the highest order incoming. Not competitive.
Probably. Well. It's hard. Like West Virginia was competitive last year. You know, they should have beat. They almost probably should have beat Pitt week 1. They beat Oklahoma later in the year. Like they're not a garbage team. This is a team that'll flirt with a bowl game probably once again. Penn State, it's a whiteout game. That's usually worth a field goal or a touchdown. I'm taking Penn State, but I don't feel great about it. 20.5 is a lot against a Power 5 team for a Penn State team. For a Penn State team that hasn't yet shown it's at that next level. You said what, 38-10?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. I mean, Ari, what do you think of Drew Allar? We saw him a bit last year. We know you think he should have played all of last year. We never really had that out on the pod, you and me. But what do you think?
You know, Chris, every single time you bring it up, I feel like you miscategorize my point. My thought process with that was simple. If you're a Penn State fan, knowing the way that the season ended last year with a Rose Bowl win, losing the only 2 regular season games that matter to you, would you rather have that Rose Bowl win and cherish it and clutch it towards your chest, or would you rather go back in time and have a more refined Drew Allar coming into this year and maybe sacrifice that Rose Bowl memory? That's it. And it's like, if I were a Penn State fan, I would sacrifice the meaningless Rose Bowl win to try to actually have a chance if it makes me 5% more likely to beat Ohio State or Michigan or both this year. Last year is nothing compared to the opportunity that this team has this year to actually do something, to make a mark and to not lose both games on their schedule that matter to them the most in order to win the consolation prize with the Rose Bowl while they look in from afar with their goggles as Ohio State and Michigan play in the playoff. Like, I don't know. I'm not a Penn State fan, so I don't know how their brain chemistry works, but it's not like this is like the prom that they're never going to forget. It was like the consolation prize in their own conference. They finished 3rd in their own division. It's not a special season that you're never going to forget ever.
I am of that belief that if you would give me a championship in any sport, in exchange we missed the playoffs and we're garbage for the next 10 years, I would take that trade-off. The problem is that's not a guaranteed trade-off here. And you had the same view before last season, before Penn State went and did what it did, that you wanted them to start Drew Allar and get through all of that stuff. I think them getting.
And who said that if they would have started Drew Allar, that they would have lost the 2 games that mattered to them in the conference and won the Rose Bowl?
But it's entirely hypotheticals on both sides of what happened or what could happen, and that's fine. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's not wrong to think that what they accomplished last year meant something and that Penn State tangibly improved for being on the stage of the Rose Bowl and beating Utah the way they did with such a young team that has carried over. That when normally they're on the big stage, they lose to Michigan, they lose to Ohio State, and that's it. Like, they got a big win. They don't have that many big wins over the last couple of years. I think it's important to get that. That helps them. That's all.
Chris, would you sacrifice all that flowery nonsense that you just said if it made their team 5% better this year?
No, because I think they're already at that spot where they could do it. I wouldn't give up the Rose Bowl for a 5%
I would certainly do it.
chance.
If you think that you're already on par,
that's fine.
I mean, I just feel like you want to go for the big thing, you know? I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm not saying that, you know.
We need Ralph Russo on here now.
Yeah, well, you know, you can go on his podcast. You guys can talk about me like you're 16-year-olds at the high school lunch. I just it would be cool to like actually hear like what Penn State fans have to say about it, because I think that more of them would probably be on my page than yours.
I don't know. I'd love to throw it out there. I'm very curious.
But I think that Penn State's going to kick West Virginia's ass this weekend.
Yeah,
I'm picking it too, but I got to see Penn State do it. I know they're a good team and everything, but like sometimes they're not as great on these stages, on these types of stages. It's the NBC game, the first NBC, so we'll see. But I think the whiteout. I
kind of feel like this is the kind of game that you're going to know whether they're covering like in the first half.
Yeah.
Like last year, if you go back and you look at their first game, that was Thursday night game, September 1st. I think that they were on the road though.
Game. Yeah,
it was the Purdue game. They were losing for most of that game. They almost
lost the game, and then Sean Clifford, funny enough, led them back at the end with a late minute drive. But then they played at Auburn 2 weeks later and kicked the crap out of Auburn. Like it wasn't even close. It's like, which one? Well, it's the same. Don't tell me that this year's West Virginia team is markedly better than that one. I'm just saying it's a similar situation.
Worse, but I'm just saying Auburn. Let's not give them too much credit for beating a clearly lame duck Auburn team that was just counting down the days.
They were both road games. This one's at home. I know it's an in-state rivalry. You know, Neil Brown is on the hot seat.
It's not an in-state rivalry.
Yes, it is.
They're different states. West Virginia and Pennsylvania are different states.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking
You're thinking Pitt. You were thinking Pitt.
Yeah, I was thinking Pitt. But
Still not an in-state rivalry, but yeah.
I wish it was the Pitt game, to be honest. But this is going to be good. CJ Donaldson's a really good running back. I'm excited to see him go. But like, if Penn State is for real this year, just come out and just don't play grab ass. Just show us.
They will. I'm in on Penn State this year, Ari.
Okay. All right, guys. Sunday night game, the main event. We're doing this at the end of the show because if you listen to it on Friday morning, like most people will, we didn't want to spoil it because you'll already know the results of this game. But I think that this is the best game of the year. Not the year. The weekend.
Wait.
I got distracted by
this game is Sunday. This game's on Sunday. You won't be spoiled if you listen to this on Friday.
Yeah, you're getting we're not on the Thursday games yet, Ari. We're still on Sunday.
Is there a way that we could just like edit this?
No. Here's my thought for you, Ari. The only rematch that we get all season is LSU Florida State.
Interesting.
In the playoff national.
Well, the thing that's really interesting to me about this, after getting this confused with the Utah Florida game for some reason, that wasn't my finest minute of podcasting. I hope you forgive me. But this, to me, is like two teams that you believe will compete for and potentially make the playoff.
Yes.
Right. And this is like recruiting versus transfers almost a little bit, right? And I'm sure Catherine will jump in here and correct me, but it's like, can you build the team that you think you can from a national championship perspective by doing it through the portal slowly but surely year over year? Or do you have to have the baseline talent accumulated through the high school ranks and then built the way that they are, that way LSU is? It's like kind of like
for LSU here, I gotta say.
You are?
Yeah. I mean, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, people are sleeping on Jaheim Bell somehow. A lot of weapons. I think this game has a lot of points as well.
And Florida State has a good offensive line for the first time in like 3 years. Like it's actually a strength.
Well, they were decent last year. They were okay.
No, but it's getting better. It's better.
Yeah.
Alex Atkins has done a great job with that line. The O-line coach.
I'm nervous for LSU, but I will say, give me Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors enough plays in the fourth quarter to survive. But this feels like 38-35 type of game here.
You think that LSU is going to win?
I think they win. I think they give me the I'll lay the points on a last second field goal redemption from last year. A chip shot field goal rather than an extra point.
Well, I want Catherine's prediction in the chat here because I'm very curious what she thinks.
She says the best bet in this game is the over. So
she says the best bet's the over, but I want to know what side she's on.
What is it?
She's
I don't know, 59, 60?
I would take the over still either way.
I want to know what side she's on in terms of like the teams, because it's like you're over here talking all that noise about LSU potentially
56.
being a national championship contender this year, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida State actually, in my opinion, is probably a more explosive team, right? They don't have Harold Perkins, but when you like name off all those offensive weapons, it's like LSU doesn't bring that to the table yet offensively.
Not that same depth. I think the Mason Smith factor is
more
huge
variety
for them. Yeah,
and he's not playing.
Exactly. The Mason Smith factor is huge. I think that's this is a game when you would need him because you need somebody to disrupt and throw off timing and help them stop the run and prevent that balance. He's not going to be there, so I'm nervous here, but I think LSU slops this out. Where are you at on this, Ari?
What?
Go ahead, Chris. I want to be the last. Yeah.
Okay.
When Mike Norvell has weapons, he is an incredibly fun football coach to watch. Those Memphis teams he had those last couple of years are stacked with NFL players. You throw Keon Coleman onto this offense and what they can do with the running game, and Johnny Wilson and Jordan Travis has gotten a lot better. This is going to be an incredibly fun team all season long. I've got Florida State straight up in this game, winning. They're getting the 2.5. And Alban, I want to go back to say, you said this would be the only rematch of the season. I think Florida State Clemson is going to be a rematch in the ACC championship game easily, because there's no divisions in the ACC this year. So 1 and 2 mix there, unless you think Clemson's not going to be, very good. But Florida State's got this, and they got Clemson in like 2 or 3 weeks after this. So we're going to find out very quickly what Florida State is.
I think that the hardest part about this game is that the biggest question mark on LSU's team maybe is their corners. Yeah. And Florida State is loaded at receiver. And another interesting question, maybe not pertaining to what side you'd be on, but who do you think has a better quarterback?
Florida State.
That's a good question. I would take Jordan Travis. I think I would. But
is it really possible that Harold Perkins just sucks out his will to live after this game too? That's the thing too.
It's possible, but if you've improved in the offensive line, you don't have Mason Smith. That makes life harder for Harold Perkins. Can Mekhi Wingo be that guy? Maybe he can, but you'd like to have them both. Where you can't just throw doubles, at 2 different guys, or you move guys around. If you've got Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo and Harold Perkins, somebody's getting free almost every play. But when you take away one of those, you can double, and then it's well, how many of your one-on-one matchups can you win? Okay, and then we'll find out. You have to think Perkins, who I guess they're going to play him a little bit more inside this year. That strikes me as okay, maybe we'll see. I don't love that, but you have to think Perkins will get more doubles than Wingo will, but we'll see.
I said at the beginning of this that this would be one of the best games of the year. I mean, it might actually be one of the best games of the year. In fact,
could be.
Last year's game was one of the best games of the year. The way it ended, that was crazy.
One of the best quarters of the year.
Fourth quarters of the year. I was at I think I said this to you guys, but I was at a fantasy football draft in Vegas. We had a suite at one of the hotels there, and we were all drafting, and then we decided to cumulatively all bet on LSU with the league money to double the league money or just play for fun that year. Then we all had LSU. So when that missed extra point happened, the silence in that room, it was painful. It was because we all thought it was an L for 3 quarters, and then it was just one of the best fourth quarters I remember seeing in a long time. And then you get all the way down the field, you score that touchdown, and then you miss the extra point. It's just woo.
I was at my nephew's wedding. I missed the first 3 quarters of last year's game, unfortunately.
Is it bad to just say you don't know? I don't know. If I had I think I would just take the points here when it's kind of a toss-up. But the Harold Perkins factor to me, it's if he can just disrupt and do things to that team that kind of just demoralizes you. I think that might help LSU from like the best defensive X factor in this game's on LSU side, but I like what Florida State brings to the table offensively better. So, and their offensive line without Mason Smith, I'm talking myself. I think I'm on Florida State in this game.
Catherine B said she was on a bachelorette trip for that game last year. She also has LSU by 10, but she's not confident in the cornerbacks. So
Catherine should actually
not with the pick, but
come up with like a dissertation on this game so we all can follow it. But it seemed like we were kind of on the same wavelength there. So
are we going Monday or Thursday here, Ari?
All right, let's go Thursday games towards the end, and we'll finish on Monday. Correctly, I'll say now. We're doing this at the end of the show because these games are on Thursday night. If you're listening to us on Friday morning, we didn't want blah, blah, blah. Let's do it. One of the more interesting games of the week, I think, Florida and Utah. Florida was at one point an 8-point dog, and then Cameron Rising was ruled out of the game, and the spread has now dropped to 4.5.
Not officially,
Florida
but
on
unlikely.
the road. At Utah,
Cam Rising's not
minus 4.5. Yeah. He's not out. Oh, I thought that I read somewhere that he wasn't playing. But
he's probably out, but they haven't said he's out.
Okay.
Yeah. I got a double hot take for you on this game.
Okay.
Hot take number 1: Brant Kuithe is a bigger loss than Cam Rising. Hot take number 2: neither is going to matter, and Utah still wins this and covers it relatively easy.
Wow.
Utah doesn't beat you with quarterback play. I'm worried about Kuithe, but a tight end isn't worth 3 points. I think the spread moved down. People have kind of known that Cam Rising, like, this is not, they didn't shock the world yesterday when you saw that. Like, this has been trending this direction for a while. But I think during the summer at one point it was like a 10-point spread. It's been moving in this direction for a while. But they beat you by being tough up front, being sound on defense. Do we believe in Florida's weapons and Graham Mertz being able to find them? I personally don't. Utah tackles well. You're not going to see a lot of busts. And again, that's going to be enough against a Florida team with alarmingly low expectations. So give me the Utes here because they're going to win this game on the line of scrimmage and easily absorb the blows.
But you don't think that Florida's going to have a pulse this year, do you?
If you told me that Florida was going to be the worst team in the SEC this year, I would say, okay.
I mean, Stu picked them to go 3-9.
Yes, that's what I would say. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's on the table.
I went to Gainesville 2 weeks ago to see Florida, and they were all very curious about Cam Rising, and they were collecting newspaper clippings as much as they could to try to get a read on what was going to happen there. If you're going to play Utah, it's better to get them in September than it is to get them in November. And I think we saw an example of that last year when Florida beat Utah, and Utah went on to win the Pac-12 and looked like a great team at the end of the season. I think Florida has a real shot here. The coaches, they feel like they're going to surprise people. They know no one's really giving them a chance. They know some people don't think they'll make a bowl game. They think they have enough in place, especially in the trenches where Utah usually beats you. They feel good there. They feel like they'll be able to run the ball and stop the run. And that's what kind of this year's team is going to be built on, because you don't want to try to win a game with Graham Mertz. I am skeptical of Graham Mertz as a successful option for Florida. Billy Napier is very, very high on him. Billy Napier's offense is always molded around the quarterback. They can kind of dumb it down, is the way an agent put it to me. They think they'll be okay. I think the fact that if Kuithe and Rising are out, it's going to be real tough for Utah, and it's going to be a low-scoring game, I think, kind of similar to last year maybe. Mm-hmm. I've got Florida with the points here. I would take Florida the 4.5. I mean, if it was still 8,
thing, though, Chris, last year, Utah was the better team in that game by a wide margin, and they had the most uniquely terrible game plan for Anthony Richardson that made him look like Superman and made us all wonder if he was going to be a Heisman contender. And the way they lost contain consistently with him, they couldn't see or stop the design runs with him. He looked like Cam Newton in that game, and he didn't look like that again, maybe the entire season. No. They just don't have that with Graham Mertz, and I just don't see the improvements going to be there. I think it's going to be the same Utah team. And don't sleep on Rice Eccles. Like, that's a house of horrors for a lot of people.
It is.
And so, listen, it will be a ugly game. I think this looks something like a 21-10 sort of situation, 21-13 maybe. That's what I think we're going to see.
See, I think it's like a 21-17 type of thing. So
I don't think anybody is at least reserving the notion or the possibility that Graham Mertz can just come out firing bullets all over the place, huh? For the guy that's just like
team.
He was misused at his previous stop, and he comes out just rifling pigskin.
Not against Utah. I mean, I could see it. I could see it a handful of times this year. Maybe 2-3 games he goes for 303 scores. That's plausible. It's not happening.
Well, he's never gone for 300 yards in his career. He has never thrown for 300.
Yeah, but that's Wisconsin. The Wisconsin 175-yard passing game is a 300-yard passing game at any other school.
That's fair. So. My other question, though, with Florida is that their receivers, they don't have a great receiving core. They got Pearsall there, but a lot of question marks otherwise. I watched a little bit of one Florida practice, and Mertz was not very accurate. It's just one practice. Take it for what it's worth.
That.
But this is you're going to have to get the ball out on time. You're right. I don't think Richardson kind of fit into what Napier wanted to do. So, like, it's possible they just have a more efficient offense despite losing the number 5 pick in the draft. Like maybe it's just kind of a Ewing theory type of thing. So I don't know. Florida, the folks down there, they're cautiously optimistic, but they know if they go to Utah and lay a complete egg and then they've got Tennessee 2 weeks later, it could spiral out of control. It's a young team with a good amount of freshmen in the 2 deep. They're going to need to like have some stuff to feel good about and build on early on.
Okay, guys, we're at an hour and 1 minute. We have a few more games left. Why don't we just go lightning round before we get to superlatives, okay? And there's another game on Thursday night, Nebraska at Minnesota. I'm taking the points. I think Nebraska is going to be more competent, and I'm high on Sims.
I'll lay the points. Matt Rule, I think we are all buying, but traditionally it has not happened overnight. Slow starts, the turnover they always come out of the gate slow. And it's sort of a slow burn, and then it heats up in a hurry. I buy them long term, but I think there's going to be a lot of kinks. I'd like to see historically first-year coaches against the spread in their first game. I'd like to see those numbers. Ethan Kaliakmanis, good player. Minnesota, underrated place to play. No Mo Ibrahim, but you got Mo Tyler. I think ultimately Minnesota gets this done, and Nebraska looks a little ugly to start.
Yeah, look, I mean, Matt Rule, his first year at Temple, he goes 2-10. His first year at Baylor, he goes 1-11. And he took over teams that were not like garbage when he got there. I know Baylor kind of had the scandal going on, but they were like 4-7 the year before he got there, and then they go 2-10. So like it takes time for him to build it. Now maybe the portal and what they can do speeds that process up. But I think Minnesota, it's just a consistent team the last 4 or 5 years. They're going to win 8-9 games. They're at home. They're going to be able to run the ball. They got a new quarterback. We'll see how that works. But I think Minnesota will just be too good inside in the trenches, what they've been the last few years, to beat a new team like Nebraska. I would take Minnesota giving 7 points.
Clemson -13 on Monday night against Duke on the road.
I think I'm scared that the Clemson might be back. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley. There's a lot of other questions about Clemson, but I think those
I've got some.
Yes, and they're all fair. But if you have a competent play caller, and I think the last couple of years, Clemson's offense has been rough to watch, and DJU was a big part of that, but schematically, they had a lot of issues as well. I think if you listen, Cade Klubnik's a lot more talented than Max Duggan, and I think you can maybe do some stuff here. How they figure out how to use Will Shipley will be very interesting. So this may be a coming out party type game. I love Riley Leonard. I think he might be the most underrated player in the country, but I don't know that it's going to show up against Clemson. I think Garrett Riley could be the talk of week 1.
My biggest question with Clemson is not the quarterback. It's not the offense coordinator. It's the receivers. They have not had a game-breaking receiver in a while. Jordan Shipley can do a lot of different things and whatever, but that's my biggest question with them. Can they get explosive plays in what they want to do? I still think either way, though, Clemson, given the points, I would still take Clemson this because Duke, they won 9 games last year, and they were a lot more competent. Riley Leonard's a good quarterback. They were better on defense. But that team got every conceivable break last year. Like, the turnover luck that they had was extremely high. I don't think that happens to them again this year. these two teams haven't played in like 5 years, Clemson and Duke. So not real much to go off of that. But I think Clemson is just perfectly competent, and Duke isn't quite as lucky, and Clemson wins this game by 17, 21 points type of deal.
Yeah, I think that looking at Clemson sitting there in the top 5 of the 247 Sports talent composite, huh? What if Bo Collins has a big year? I think that, like, from a talent standpoint, obviously Clemson is far and away the better team, but I think that, like, a lot of people are falling in love with Leonard on the other side and thinking that this is going to be a closer game as a result of that. And I actually just think that it's possible that Clemson is the best pick to make the playoff out of the ACC, and we've just kind of forgotten about them a little bit through the hype of Florida State and some of the other quarterbacks in that league. So I'm laying the points here. I think Clemson's going to win, and I think they're going to win pretty handily. Okay, quick superlative picks. Okay, we're going to do this really quickly. What's your guys' trap game of the week? Can you have a trap game in week 1, by the way? If you've been
you can
building up to it for 7-8 months?
You can if you're Tulane and you lose Tyjae Spears and you're playing a really good South Alabama team that brings back most of its offense and that the teams are sleeping on and maybe a little too high on Tulane. A touchdown underdog, look out for South Alabama to spring the upset in week 1.
Is that a trap? Is that a trap for us fans as opposed to a trap game for Tulane? Because I think
it's a trap for everyone. How about that?
Because I think South Alabama is really good.
Yes, they are.
Very high.
Shout out Carter Bradley, baby.
My trap game, Washington State going to Colorado State. Colorado State last year, really, really bad. But Clay Millen's a decent quarterback. I think Colorado State's going to take a big jump this year. They were extremely young. It's a Pac-12 team going on the road. And Colorado State, 2 weeks from now, I think could be interesting. So, but keep an eye on Washington State going to Colorado State. Also, potential future conference game with realignment.
Also, keep an eye out Virginia Tech and Old Dominion. Ricky Ronnie. Ricky Ronnie high.
We're gonna. I want to know what you think about this, Chris, because you're locked in on Michigan State. Aaron asked in the comments here to spend a brief moment talking about Michigan State and Central Michigan, and like Michigan State's laying only 14 points. Like that to me, like if things are really headed in the wrong direction down there, like in the morale on the team is like that to me strikes me as kind of a dangerous spot too. You got an in-state game, and I'm actually correct on the states this time, and a team that doesn't have a lot to feel good about at the moment. Like that is disaster waiting to happen. Am I crazy pills on this one, or are you with me a little bit?
Well, Michigan State has lost to Central Michigan twice. I covered one of them, 2009. Dan Lefevre and Antonio Brown and Butch Jones went up to Spartan Stadium and won.
You are old, bro.
I know.
That was a remembering guys all-star game right there.
Yeah. So, like, Central Michigan, they've lost a lot of guys in the portal. I'm very, very interested in their quarterback, Bert Emanuel Jr. He had, like, 3 60-yard runs in like 4 games last year. I haven't checked if he won the job or not. Extremely explosive player, quarterback. Basically,
wasn't one of them in the snow game?
I think it was. So, in Michigan State, this is a Friday game. I think they usually open on Fridays, but Michigan State in week 1, they're always starting slow. They have always started slow under D'Antonio. It's just kind of something they do, especially if it's one of those night games. I just think Central Michigan has too many questions. I think Central Michigan could be kind of not great. I would take Michigan State with that, but that's kind of more of a statement about CMU.
It's a trap. That's the point of it. It's a trap.
Oh yeah, it's a trap game for sure.
Yeah.
Trap game.
All right, your locks of the week. You already alluded to mine. Old Dominion plus 17, I think, is the spread. Come on. What are we doing here? 17 points is a lot in that game.
Virginia Tech, listen, I'm sorry if you're a college football fan in the state of Virginia. It's going to be a rough year. My lock of the week, Utah -4. And I will go bonus. Chris, you scared me a little bit. But Chris, Boise, Washington over 59.
Wow, lock of the week.
Oh, yeah,
Utah. That's interesting.
My lock of the week, another game we already talked about, TCU. I don't think that game's going to be close.
You can't have the lock of the week if you don't know the amoeba that they're playing. You don't even know who they're playing yet.
You were on my side throughout all
I
this.
am on your
We'll
side.
harass him on. We'll harass him on Saturday afternoon.
It's just
when,
the unbettable game of the week.
When Colorado hits a backdoor cover of some kind.
Maybe bet it live in the second quarter when you got a good handle of what's out there.
The other one would have been Clemson Duke, as we just said and I just explained. I don't think Duke gets the turnover like it did last year.
There's only one answer for Sicko's game of the week, and that's Rutgers.
Who gave this a standalone window? This is perversion in its highest form. Sunday at noon. I'm going to be on a plane when this game kicks off, and I am thankful that will be the case.
It's like
the CBS game. It's on CBS. This is what we're going to get instead of the SEC on CBS. This is what we're going to be getting.
Listen, dude. Like when I think of a sicko, I think of somebody who's kind of looking through the window, like the guys on Twitter do. It's like they are literally broadcasting this in its own window. Nobody's peering through the glass on this one. We're going to be watching it with our eyes peeled open.
Hit the bump button every time there's an offensive snap in this game.
Yeah, and I just want to do one more thing before we get out of here.
Yes.
We have to just quickly pick the South Carolina North Carolina game because we didn't get to that one, and that's an important game this week. I think that North Carolina is going to cover that game. I think Drake May is going to take a nice step forward onto the platform of being one of the best players in the country, and people are going to recognize him a little bit more. I know their defense has struggled in the past, but I don't know if I'm buying the hype of South Carolina this year. What do you guys think?
I'm gonna regretfully say I'm gonna go with the Spencer Rattler reconnaissance project or Renaissance project to continue on.
Reconnaissance.
Yeah. I just pulled an Ari. No, but I'm gonna bet on it to continue from Clemson and Tennessee. I don't think we're gonna see that much of an improved North Carolina offense and our defense, and Spencer Rattler takes advantage. Another game we're gonna see a whole bunch of points, I suspect.
My whole thing is with North Carolina under Mac Brown, when they've got hype, they always underachieve, and when you're doubting them, they overachieve. Drake May comes out of nowhere last year at 8, and North Carolina has a good season. Now they're expected to do something, and Drake May looks like the number 2 pick. They're not going to have so good of a season, and it's going to be the same. It's going to be the Sam Powell thing all over again. So I'm going to go with South Carolina getting the points in this game.
All right, guys, we went a little bit long. I don't feel bad about it because it is the first week of the season.
Week
so
one,
I just want to thank
4 days
everybody.
of games. A lot of games.
Of course, want to thank everybody for tuning into the live feed of Until Saturday on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Google, wherever you get your podcasts, please leave a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Please follow myself, David, and Chris on Twitter. I'm at Ari Wasserman. He's at David Ubben, and he's at Chris Vanini. Just full name squad on Twitter, by the way. Love that. And of course, if you want to watch our videos when they're live, again, we're going to be live on Thursday night or Thursday during the day, picking games, Saturday night after the games to recap the whole day, and then Sunday every week to do a sound off with your voicemails. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on the YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel can be found in the show's description. And now we're going to kick it off to the Darius Rucker interview so you can hear about his South Carolina fanhood.